so I can share us? Okay.
Welcome to LinkedIn Sites. We're just having a little pre-conversation about the fun and games we like to have. And I'm thrilled to have this conversation with Debbie Goetz, who is a PR and media maven. But I'll let her start uh, with question one. Who are you and what do you do?
So I am Debbie Goetz. I own Debbie Goetz Media Connections, established in 2010. And it's a public relations and communications firm. I work with small to mid-sized businesses, B2B service providers, municipalities, and nonprofits to help them share their news, manage crises, communicate with their target audiences and with members of the media, basically elevate their brand and their mission to whoever their target audiences are and to the media if it's appropriate.
So I always like to think about it in reverse in terms of like, so what's the problem that they're usually having? And they're like, we need Debbie.
So many businesses and nonprofits and municipalities, they have a lot of news to share. They have great stories to tell, but they don't know how to promote themselves. And a lot of people, business owners, aren't comfortable, shouting their successes from the rooftop. So whatever the platforms are that they communicate on, whether it's website, social, email, blog, or like their print collateral, I help them do it more clearly, more concisely, on mission, on brand, on message, and help them get noticed for the successes in their industry, their community, or whatever their business space is. So it helps elevate their credibility, their brand, and their mission by raising awareness of their business activities, their successes, their charitable initiatives that they do to support their communities. And we do this through press releases, targeted media pitches, opinion pieces, whatever they need.
It's interesting. I was thinking about businesses that are really great, but are like, yeah, and when they're looking for PR, they're like, we don't want to be a secret anymore. We want people to actually know about us because there are a lot of great businesses out there who need help to basically elevate their voice and make people aware that they're even there. And that's
Right.
why someone like you is so powerful. Now, you said, municipalities, small to mid-sized businesses. Is there anything in particular that kind of creates an ideal client for you?
I've been on the prowl for a mid-sized law firm and a community bank because they have new associates or new staff members. They have board appointments. They have honors, awards, accolades. They have charitable initiatives. And they may have an ideal, they likely should not have their own in house PR staff. Um, but they might have a marketing person or a marketing team, but marketing staff may not understand PR. A lot of people don't understand the difference between PR and advertising. You and I
Mm.
do. But, I see marketing is like the macro and PR. Like, so if you did marketing 101, you've got the four P's of marketing: product, price, promotion, place. And PR fits into the promotion category. So they might know the marketing, the other P's, but they might not understand or have the wherewithal or the connections for that promotion piece.
You talked about one of the things that you do is help them kind of shout their successes. So I'll just go off script here a little bit, and I'm curious, like, what are you most proud of in terms of something you've accomplished in your career?
So it's actually not a typical PR success story, but I did some PR work for a home healthcare agency a number of years ago. They had a husband and wife that they cared for, and the husband was turning 104. He was a World War II veteran, and he was turning 104, and his wife was like 98. And they were having a party at their house, and they wanted to get the media out there, which I did, as well as all of his legislators and Congressman Fitzpatrick, may he rest in peace, came, and Tom Mert. He lived in Hatboro. And after that, they asked me to do some additional work. A year or so later, he was a guest at a local elementary school in Council Rock on Veterans Day. And then in 2016, his family came to me and said, and I refer to him as Papa Bill, but they said, Dad wants to meet the president, like the president, like
Mhm.
POTUS. And I said, hell yeah. Because if LeBron can meet the president and Michael Jordan can meet the president, and you know then why can't Papa Bill meet the president? He's 108 years old. He was one of the oldest remaining World War II veterans that was alive at the time. And so it was not easy, but through all of my, I like to say that I'm politely persistent, and I persevere. I mean, there was no way I was not getting Bill Moore to the White House. And I have to show you this picture. Hang on. By golly, Bill went to the White House.
Wow.
And it made, besides making local news, it made national news, and it made news around the world. And so it was the accomplishment of getting him to the White House, because, like I said, not an easy task, a lot of hurdles to go through. But I am grateful to Senator Casey's office, really made it happen. And I learned a lot about civics and government through that process. If you've got a D in the office, then you need the help of the D's to get your guest in there. If you got an R in the office, go to the R's. So in that particular case, Senator Casey's team came through and got him invited to the Veterans Day breakfast at the White House. His two children are in that picture with him. And
That's amazing.
yes, and so it was an adventure getting him down to DC. Everywhere we stopped, people surrounded him. We had the day before a welcome ceremony at the World War II Memorial, and tourists were flocking around him. I got a call on the way down from CBS News, like not CBS Philly, like CBS
Right.
News, that that their reporter, their correspondent was going to meet us there. And coincidentally, it was right after the election, and it was the day that former President Trump met with former President Obama at the White House. So there was a lot going on in DC that day because of that. But like I said, national news, international news, I was fielding calls left and right from everywhere. And sadly, Bill passed away the following month, but he got
Wow.
to check that huge thing off his bucket list. And it just makes me really proud to have been able to do that for him and to be in Washington with him and his family. And so, yeah, not traditional PR kind of stuff, but
What
are
a
you
great
real?
story. So
Are we allowed to use
it's
four-letter words on here?
you sure?
My tagline should be, people tease me and say whatever Debbie wants, Debbie gets, but it's never like that in my real world. It's more like Debbie gets shit done. So in that case, yeah, it was just an amazing experience to make that happen for him.
Well, I thank you for sharing that. It's an awesome story, and what I love about hearing that story is it's clear to me that you don't do this because like, oh, it's just you know a job. You actually care about what you're doing. You can make that impact, and I think that's the part that really matters in anything you do, whatever it is. If you have an impact,
Yeah,
and you're making a difference, and maybe it's not going to happen every time, but that's
right.
the goal. And I think whatever that way is to serve your clients, that's the other thing that I think is
Yes,
really the kind of lesson of that story to me is like you work really hard because you want them, to be fulfilled in what they're trying to achieve. Um,
exactly. Whatever that is. Yeah.
whatever
Yeah,
that may be.
you're very intuitive, because I tell people that I like to work with um, people and businesses and organizations to try to make the world a better place for others. It's not, a deal breaker if they don't, but it certainly makes me um, enjoy my work more if what I'm
Yeah.
doing helps in that way.
Well, it's interesting because I talk about the fact that like I'm not saving the world and I'm not curing cancer. I'm not doing, but my feeling is that you're making a better world by every interaction. So it's that one
Mhm.
person you might make their day better, then you've had an impact. And I think it's at that
Right.
micro level that sometimes matters as much as that, the big fancy stuff that people see. Um,
Right.
and in business, it's important to kind of, I think feel that you're making a difference in whatever way you are. Speaking of which, that segues very nicely to my next question, which is, so can you think of a business book or a podcast that you think kind of had that impact on you, was worth the time to read or to listen to?
Can I give you two?
You may.
Okay. So one is not so much a business book, but it's certainly something that we can take lessons from. for business, and it's The Four Agreements by Don Miguel
Hmm.
Ruiz. And he talks about four agreements for a better life. It's like a code of conduct that we need to make with ourselves to free ourselves from self-limiting beliefs that can cause us to suffer or limit us in some way. So it's be impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally, which is a challenge sometimes. Don't make assumptions, also a challenge sometimes. Always do your best. That's not so hard because I always try to do my best. So that, is very meaningful to me. There was another book I read years ago when I first started out in my firm. It was written by Michael Port, who years ago was a
Hmm.
soap opera actor. It's called Book
Hmm.
Yourself Solid. You're familiar with it?
I know Michael Port. I've worked with Michael Port. He is amazing as a speaker. That's what he and Amy Port now have. Heroic public speaking.
Hmm.
They're just incredible people and really good at what they do. But yeah, book
Yeah.
yourself solid.
So does he know that he made such an impact on you?
I think so. I mean, I've worked with him recently enough. So as part of the National Speaker Association, we went up to do his core program, which is phenomenal. It's a 2 day program, and then I have friends who have done their grad program, which is an intense. I just have someone who just finished it, and they're one thing I'll say about Michael Port specifically, from my perspective, is he is the best laser coach live I've ever seen. When someone
Mm,
gives a speech and he stops them and then he shares a tweak that seems like, and it's always something that you're like, wow, like it's
yep,
he's just they're on their game, and
yep,
and I mean that from both a professional level and then just they're personable people who I'm glad to have spent time with.
right.
Um,
Well, I went to a presentation he did, and he was talking about Book Yourself Solid, and he talked about the red velvet rope policy. Do you know what that is?
why don't you share for those who aren't?
Okay. So the red velvet rope policy. So think about when you see clips from a movie premiere
Hmm.
or a fancy club that only lets in certain people.
Are you on the
It's
list?
that it's that red velvet. The what list?
I said, "Are you on the list?" That's always
Oh,
like,
are you on the
and then
list? Exactly. It's that red
they
velvet
move
rope
the
that keeps out the people that are not supposed to gain entry. And in a business context, he talked about how you need to have a red velvet rope policy and only take on clients or assignments or tasks for which you're going to be able to do your best work. So I have learned the hard way over the years, by trying to stick to the red velvet rope policy, that if the red flags are flying when someone comes your way, you really have to acknowledge them and try to avoid them, because no amount of money someone's going to pay you is worth the aggravation or the stress that they may cause you by being your client. And what Michael says is that by not by not engaging your red velvet rope, what happens is that client will bring you down. And not only will you
Mhm.
not be doing your best work for them, but you won't be in a frame of mind to do your best work for the other people who really do deserve it. So I've learned the hard way, because when things were a little bit leaner and I would take on, whatever came my way, I paid a price in exactly the way he talks about, because those people will bring you down, and then you just don't have the energy or the ability to do your best work for anyone. So I love
Yeah,
that, and that has stuck with me. So next time you talk to Michael, he might not remember me, but tell him you talked to someone for whom that has rung true and really helped.
yeah, and I love it. The version the kind of less elegant version that I ascribe to is the no jerk policy. So don't work with anyone who's a jerk. Don't, whether it's internally or externally, if they're a jerk or the a hole, however you want to, it's never worth it. It's never worth it.
You know
And yeah,
something? I had a person come to me, not naming names, came to me through LinkedIn, worked for a nonprofit, and was having some kind of initiative going on, and wanted me to help get media attention. And I thought, it seemed like a nice organization, and sometimes I do pro bono work, and sometimes that pro bono work leads to client engagements. So I helped out, and I got media coverage. I got a couple of news crews out there, and then something got shared by someone on my team that inadvertently was the not approved final version of the press release after the event. And this person like blasted me on LinkedIn, blasted my staff. This is
Oh,
somebody who wasn't even paying me. And I found out
mm,
afterwards he was going around to like all the PR firms looking for free help wherever he could get it. And was really, really unkind and went through all my blogs and then started posting comments on my it was really, the man was
wow.
crazy. So, yeah. And he was a little bit arrogant when I was talking. So, talk about red flags and the red
Yeah.
velvet rope. He was kind of arrogant before I did the work for him, and the red flags were there, and I didn't pay attention to them, and I should have.
We're not alone. We've all
Yeah,
done, those
it was
engagements
a
that were
giant
like,
yike.
whoa, you know, but we learn. You either win or you learn. That's an expression I always like.
Yeah. Yep. Sometimes
Speaking
you
of
need
those,
to learn too.
yeah, no, right. Well, that's the point is that when you lose, you actually learn. So as long as you're
Right.
learning when you lose, then you're in good shape. Um, so now I'm going to ask you to do something that sometimes people find challenging, which is, can you think of a LinkedIn connection that you're, really glad you have, aside from me, of course,
Shoot,
and
now I
and
have to
kind of
think about it.
why?
Yeah, so I really did give this some thought before this morning, and I'm going to go with Anzio Williams. Anzio used to be the news director at NBC 10, and I had a lot of dealings with Anzio with clients when he served that role. And then he was promoted to be the senior VP of DE&I at NBC Universal. So I think I don't know if he's in New York, literally, like physically in New
Right.
York, but working for the mothership in New York. And he is the type of person who will always respond to an email or a text or a call. At the beginning of COVID, I think he was still here. Um, I had a client, a nonprofit that was doing a news conference out in like the Lancaster area, and we were all like trying to figure out how to make stuff happen, during the
Right.
pandemic. And I texted him and I said, I'm thinking of having a Zoom news conference. Like, would your people attend? And he said, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, he took the call or the text or whatever it was.
Right.
He responded, and it doesn't matter what position he's in. Like, he's just
Mm,
a
right.
down to earth kind of guy, and helps when he can. And haven't chatted with him in a while. And this is going to remind me just to check in and say hi. But
Well, he's going to be
he's just
mentioned in our little summary, so don't worry.
there. You go. So I better warn him. But he's been a real like approachable and stand up guy, and in my world I appreciate it. And having those connections is, you never know when, knowing somebody like Anzio and where he is in his career at this point, can be helpful in making other connections or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I heard something interesting today that I'm going to appropriate. I was listening to a TED talk from Adam Grant, who I love, and his line was, um, "Love is not about frequency of communication, but the depth of connection." And as someone who loves the word connection and things, I'm going to tweak it for my content, which is about engagement. But it's not just about communication; it's about that connection with people, and so it's about
And the
when you form
quality of
those connections.
connection.
Right, the
Mhm.
quality of those connections really matters. Speaking of content, so I'm writing this book on content called The Content Beast, and I'm curious. So, what's your favorite kind of content to consume from brands and out
Well,
in the world?
because of what I do for a living, I consume a lot
Hmm.
of news content. So I'm kind of a dinosaur. I still get two newspapers delivered every day, although they have both notified me that they're going to be delivered through the US Postal Service now. So, like, what about the morning newspaper when you have your cup of coffee? I want my cup of coffee and my newspaper. Not going to be happening for Debbie anymore.
Do you
So,
not ever? My father gets both some things in paper and then also digital versions? Do you ever look on an
Yeah,
iPad
I
or
do.
do
No, I definitely do, but I like to read
it's
the
not the
newspaper, and the
same.
thing is, I'm on the computer all day long, so I don't wanna be consuming
Right.
all my news on the computer because my eyes are gonna fall out. So, I like having the newspaper, I like doing the crossword puzzles and the
So
jumbles and the click to
I'll give a
quotes.
shout out to the Philly. I get the Philly Business Journal, and I love again that I
You know,
read
that
it
I
online,
get digitally.
but but having it physically is kind of nice.
Yeah. So I get the
Um,
Inquirer and the Intelligencer in the mi in my driveway, and then, I read the Biz Journal online, and I have, alerts set up. I get Inquirer, I get New York Times, I get Washington Post, a lot of different
you're a
headlines
news
coming
junkie.
through, Ad Age, PR News, because I belong to the Public Relations Society of America. So a lot of that kind of contact that's relevant to either just the business world or the people world or the PR world. And then if I'm not consuming that kind of content, then sadly, probably, you'll find me on TikTok. I'm a voyeur. I don't post anything. I just watch cooking stuff, like recipes, cooking hacks, and animal videos. And, yeah, so that's
I
what I'm
love the.
consuming.
I don't remember. Lots of people do it now, but when Tasty was out and they used to do those time lapse of cooking, like how to cook recipes really fast. I thought those because even though they're going really fast, you could follow along to make something. And
Yeah, and you
I
can
thought they
share, like, I email myself the link, and then usually they post the recipe, or you can just kinda if you slow it down or something, but
right
yeah, even if
pause.
it's just, like, it gives me ideas, even if I don't exactly follow the recipe, just gives me ideas. So, yeah,
And
and
in
then the
terms
animals
of,
just that.
so I'm curious, like you're helping people create content, and then in terms of your own business, you got to create content. So what's the kind of favorite kind of content that you like to share with people?
So yeah, I'm like the shoemaker whose kids have no shoes. So I go through fits and spells with my own blog. I'm in a fit right now. I need to get caught up, but I do enjoy blogging about things that are a little bit outside the PR box or connecting things
Hmm.
to PR that maybe not. So I remember years ago, my son was in the orchestra at Central Bucks East, and we took a trip to watch the Philadelphia Orchestra, and Yo-Yo Ma was a guest.
Oh wow.
So we got to see them rehearsing at,
Wow.
I guess it was the Kimmel Center, and it was amazing. It was amazing, and I wrote a blog about it. I don't remember what the title was, but I sat there on my tablet writing a blog from there, and it had something to do with that experience. I'll have to send you the link. But,
Maybe I'll try and find it.
yeah. And then there was another one I did. So I have a client who's very active in the Republican Party out in Bucks County, and he hosted a presidential campaign stop back, you know, before the 2016 elections. And it just so happened it was on my birthday. And it doesn't matter, like, it didn't matter which side of the aisle my politics are because I totally, because of what I do, don't share my politics and keep politics out of it. But I wrote a blog called There's No Politics in PR because whether I stood for that candidate or I didn't stand for
Hmm.
that candidate, I had a job to do that day. And my job was to manage the media. And it was national media, local media, regional media. And I actually, one of the former assignment editors at think it was Action News. His name is Mike Nealon. He sent me an email that day saying, "I'm so glad you're the one handling this because you do a really good job." That was like one of the best compliments. I have to tell Mike Nealon how much that meant to me to hear that from him, because he's getting hammered all day long with pitches
Hmm.
and news ideas. And
Right.
when he told me that he was glad that I was the one managing that, it really made me proud. But so I wrote this blog called "There's No PR in Politics." So I
I
like
love it.
to kind of write stuff that's a little bit, outside the box or connect things from an outside the box kind of way. And I like
I'm a big
creating,
fan of connecting the dots outside the box. That's
yeah, yep. We're like that way. And I like creating social media content. I'm getting really good at Canva now. and creating things on
Canva is
Canva for my clients.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been hearing
Speaking of
about
which, so
it, but I never did anything with it. So now I have to, um, because I'm working with the Forum of Executive Women here in Philly, and um, they have a lot of content and like a whole brand template on Canva. So I'm learning a lot.
great organization. My mother's been involved with them for years and years.
At the Forum?
Um, mhm.
Really? What's your mother's name?
Emmy Miller. She's a consultant,
Okay.
executive coach.
I haven't met her yet, but that's good
I'll
to
have
know.
to connect the two of you because she's awesome.
Okay.
And then in terms of creating that content, so one of the challenge, what do you think is kind of the biggest challenge, whether it's for you or your clients in creating that kind of consistent and valuable content? Like, what do you find that people find the hardest part of that?
I don't think it's creating the content per se. It's more like for PR, I think measurement is the biggest challenge. So sometimes it's difficult to measure the efficacy of your content or your campaign. It's
Hmm.
kind of like when my husband works, he owns an all-state agency. And it's kind of like for him, he might have a commercial on Comcast, or he might have a mailer that comes in somebody's mailbox, or he might have a social media campaign. And you never know what that tipping point was for somebody that
Hmm.
made them finally make the call. It's kind of like that with PR. PR is not advertising, it's not paid advertising,
Right.
and a
Earned.
lot of people don't know the difference. It's earned media. And sometimes you don't know if it was that article or they saw something else or they read a blog. So measuring the efficacy and the success of the content we can. I mean, you can look at all the analytics, but you don't always know why the person made the call or push the button to order or to get a consultation or whatever.
And I think one of the challenges about that is it may not just be one thing. It may be
Right.
that it's the 7 times and 7 touch points. That's why you need marketing and you need PR so that you have the
Right.
combinations that aggregate that enable someone to then make that decision.
Right,
At
and
least
when
that's
and it's funny because you said touch points, and when I'm talking to clients about that, I'm saying and when I say touches, I don't mean creepy touches.
right. So I say touch
'Cause,
points, touch
when you
points.
talk about touching, like touch points, you're like, we gotta be really careful." But I say touches, but not creepy touches.
Yes. Okay. Not creepy touches.
No creepy
And
touches
then
allowed.
my final question for you is outside the box, which is so I produce animation, and I'm always curious in the pantheon of animated characters, do you have one that is a favorite or one or two?
Yes. I'm a big fan of Dory in Finding Nemo, because one of my mantras is "Just keep swimming." And I try not to let failure be a liability. I try to let failure be a teacher, and I get up, I dust myself off, keep trying, and keep swimming. Whether it's something in my business life or in my personal life, I really try to channel my inner Dory and just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. That's kind of my mantra. Just keep swimming.
That is fantastic, and I really love
Who's
that, and
your
I love
favorite
Dory.
animated character?
She's pretty awesome.
I'm
Well,
throwing it back
Debbie,
at you. Who's yours?
I used to say the Tasmanian Devil, something about his unbridled enthusiasm about him. And then I don't know, it's interesting, Gossamer, which many people don't know the name, but it's the big orange creature from Bugs Bunny that he ends up doing his hair, and he starts out as
Oh,
this really
okay, yeah,
scary thing, and then through Bugs Bunny's charm, he becomes this kind of soft, cuddly thing. And
yeah.
so I like the idea of something that starts kind of wild that you can then bring. Maybe that's kind of my own. There's probably some projection going on there. Where,
Let me check with
I,
your mom after you introduce
yeah,
us.
my mom
I'll
and my
ask
wife will
her.
be able to share with you about how I had a lot of energy, and then I've learned a little bit to rein it in a bit. Um, but this has been great, and I super
Thank you.
appreciate you, and this has been fun. So
I gotcha.
thank you,
Next time I'm in the
and so
city, we'll have to do lunch. Are you in the city?
I, I am, and I would love to
Okay.
do that, and I will definitely find time. And for all of you out there, I have one final thought shared from Debbie: just keep swimming.
Just keep swimming.